St. Bees on the Cumbrian coast, the summer of 1895. Mary Jebb was getting more and more worked up, watching her grandson, George, sitting on a rock far from the shoreline, the waves inexorably rolling in, soon to drag him out into the Irish Sea. As with a lot of good ideas at the time, the 9-year-old George had been so confident that the water wouldn't rise higher than his rocky perch that he'd gone out dressed in his new school blazer, hoping to watch the sea swirl around him and then recede before he returned to his family. He hadn't accounted for the high tides, which still to this day can be deadly for unwitting tourists and locals alike. Eventually, with no sign of George moving by himself, Mary raised the alarm, and a local man waded out into the water to rescue him. It wasn't easy, though, and took several attempts before the preternaturally calm and confident George was carried back to the shore. As his sister Avie told an interviewer many years later, he had no sense of fear and the knack of making things exciting and often rather dangerous. George Herbert Lee Mallory was born in 1886 in Moberly, a small but prosperous village in Cheshire in the north of England. His seaside drama was a typical adventure for a young daredevil who loved shinning up trees and church roofs, climbing whatever was in the vicinity, whether a pier or a humble drain pipe. His father, the Reverend Herbert Lee Mallory, was the 10th child of another vicar father also called George, and there were hopes that as the eldest son, young George might go into the church and maybe even take over his father's parish one day. George's mother, Annie, was the daughter of another Anglican vicar, but by contrast an only child. Unlike her more straight-laced husband, she had a free-spirited and unconventional side, and was known for her sense of fun and her laughter, and the license she gave her children to cavort and roam. George had 2 sisters, Mary, the eldest, born a year earlier than him in 1885, and Annie Victoria, known as Avie, born a year after, a tomboy and occasional partner in George's childhood adventures. Trafford, his only brother, was 6 years younger, but he too was soon roped into the fun. When it came to schooling, George had a conventional middle-class start, attending first a prep school in Eastbourne and then Winchester College, the ancient public school where he arrived aged 14 in 1900 as a mathematical scholar. It was a prestigious award which, to his father's undoubted relief, paid for most of the fees. George enjoyed himself tremendously at Winchester. Though he clearly enjoyed the academic side, his time there was notable for his sporting achievements. He took part in the college's eccentric version of soccer, the complexity of whose rules was matched only by the ferocity with which it was played. He excelled particularly at gymnastics, and was very proud to be part of the school's successful shooting team. More importantly for his future career, it was at Winchester that Mallory first discovered mountaineering, when he encountered Graham Irving, a senior master and keen aficionado of the sport. Climbing was, by the end of the 19th century, firmly established among the middle and upper classes. Its golden age had been the 1850s and 1860s, when most of the high peaks of the Alps were climbed, many of the first ascents achieved by British climbers and their guides. Before long, Britain boasted the world's first climbing association, the Alpine Club, its first mountaineering periodical, the Alpine Journal, and by the end of the 19th century, a small but active community who regularly spent their holidays climbing in France, Switzerland, and Italy.